proper. The time is now.
Good morning. Welcome, one and all. That was a strange one. I was half expecting the morning breakfast show to come on board, but it didn't happen, like I say. So welcome, one and all. I do apologise for that very small interlude of quietness. Myself, the Geordie Yam Yam, hosting today with my mate, the Super Mac Mackay, Ian, with me as normal, doing the Eddie post-presser thoughts on what was said and everything else that goes by. But I suppose before we get into all of that, I suppose we get just say hello to everybody out there. So welcome to all that's watching and everyone that's listening now on DAB Radio Northeast. You're more than welcome to have us on board. Thanks to all the mods and everybody that works in the background. You guys do an amazing job. If you could just do us three things, like I keep saying, you're very kind if you can do so. They're all free, but it certainly helps us get forward as a channel. Hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell because you will get the notifications to say that we're going live as and when we do so. Memberships are available, $4.99 for the NTTV Plus. That gives you all behind-the-scenes access to everything that we've done previously, as well as all the new stuff that's coming your way. If you've got a question for me or Ian, do me a favour, because like I say, trying to run the show as well as look for things in the chat to try and highlight, very difficult. So put a Q, put it in capitals. I'll do my best to have a look, like I say, but nothing is guaranteed. So if you do want to guarantee it, then throw us the super chat, and that will be highlighted. We'll speak about it, and I'll thank you for doing so. And obviously, everybody that comes a member during the show, or any of our lovely members out there that are listening and decide to gift them, will also be thanked as we go on. Ian, Friday morning. Obviously, it's the eve of the Brentford game, which, as Eddie alluded to, was a difficult one away at Brentford at the Bees. Something he struggled with all season, and that's to keep a winning formula and consolidate, was the words of Eddie Howe. Expecting something different tomorrow with a knackered side?
I don't think it's going to be any easier. I fear that if Chow is almost gone and is the one that's chosen to be rested, then we've got no pace in the back line and they've got three pacey guys up front. That doesn't sound brilliant. I can't see any alternative to him picking Trippier to play at right back. That doesn't sound brilliant. I mean, I'm going to be there and I'm going to turn up with the expectation of cheering another home win. But I do think it's going to be a tough game. And news, of course, that Gordon's probably going to miss it as well. So there's another one biting the dust. It's just, it's a test, isn't it?
It is absolutely a test, buddy. And the thing is like, you know, it's very difficult to try and highlight one specific area, because you know we've said previously it's been our defence and goalkeeper that's kept us involved in games going forward. But again, you still need a squad of players in front of you to support what you're doing. And I think at this present moment in time, and you know, Boki and myself yesterday were talking about this, and it was trying to understand, you know, as Boki said, we've only got two defenders, and if that's a problem, then you know we are in trouble. But it's not that was what my suggestion was. It was the fact that when you've lost such a forward-thinking player as a fullback that travels with the ball further up the field, it takes the pressure off your defenders. And at the minute, we've got a failing right back. It's not that, but he's just, you can see his legs just aren't at the speed of the game anymore. You know, as much as his mindset and his heart is willing him and to go forward, whenever we lose the ball in the final third with Trippier, and as we saw it against Man City, Botman further up the field of play, or Malik Chow going on a run, we just look so vulnerable at the back at the moment from any team that has broken against us. And, you know, it doesn't have to be the elite teams likes of Manchester City. I've alluded to before, you know, you've got the likes of Leeds that run through us. Bournemouth have done the same, excuse me. So it's something that, you know, this is something that Eddie Howe really, if you're not scoring goals at the one end of the field, you know, you've got to stop conceding them. And like I said, the problem with doing that is when you start gifting chances away like we did over recent games, it's just so difficult to try and nail one issue. And again, it seems as though for me, and apologies for rambling on, but it seems as though for me, they wear one hat to go and play in the Champions League and another hat to go and play in the Premier League.
I think they've got separate hats for home and away in the Premier League as well. I mean, the fact that we're at home gives me hope that we will beat Brentford tomorrow. Seems a long way off still, but it is tomorrow.
It is.
I think we'd lose if we were playing away. I don't think we can. I just think we would be under too much pressure. We've lost a massive part of our midfield. Tonali's probably the only first choice man in there. So the bite in the midfield, which will cut off a lot of the attacks normally, isn't there. If Gordon's not playing, I think we've lost a lot of the press up front as well. So we're not going to try and pen them in their own half. It's and it's such an important game. It's a game almost that if we lose and Chelsea and Man U and Villa all win, we're 10 points behind them with what, 13, 14 games to go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all very well saying we're hanging on the coattails and we'll go on a run and we can get European football. I know Brentford are in seventh, and if we beat them, we jump above them into seventh, and that's European football just about. But yeah, I mean, we're running out of games that we can drop points that we're not expecting to drop in to have any hope of going on with that. And I fear a draw against Brentford and a loss to Spurs, being knocked out of the FA Cup by Villa the following weekend is going to leave us drifting around in the mid-table.
Yeah,
and
treading water a little bit, isn't it?
Our superstars. We've got any superstars, but our mainstays being very vulnerable to a couple of months of jealously looking on to where other teams are finishing off competitions. It's
Benny Boy's put in here, you know, I agree. I'm hanging my hat on the fact we're at home. But then again, Villa done us at SJP. The one thing, you know, that I've seen more this season than any other season, if I'm honest with you, it's not as a fortress as it used to be, SJP. It just seems to be we've lost our little bit of a gloss. I mean, even though, like I said, the fans do give us that voice and give us that 12th man at times, that time seems to be coming only at bigger games, you know.
Well, I'm sorry to disagree with you, Gary.
Okay,
I think I much prefer sitting through the games this year. Who have we lost against? We've lost to Liverpool, which was very unfortunate.
Very good game, yeah.
Barcelona, which we gave them a really good game. I think Villa put the last goal late on to put a bit of a 2-0 gloss on a game that was. I know we were chasing shadows because Villa were very good, very professional, but we had the chances to be in that game. And Arsenal scored in 6th minute of injury time, and again they outplayed us. But that's what St James's Park is; it gets us hanging on. We've won virtually all the rest of them, draws with Tottenham and Chelsea, but won the rest. I remember sitting last year watching us get tonked off Bournemouth and lose to Everton. Was it last year? 1-0.
Yeah. We got that season. Crazy. We were lost to Forest in the past. I mean, like I said, we've had some really crazy.
But last
Fulham,
year,
yeah.
there was a Fulham, Bournemouth, Brighton in the cup. That was so annoying.
Mm,
Um, yeah, there were some teams that we really didn't want to lose for. So we lost quite a few games at home. The thing with last year was we either won or lost. We didn't
lost,
draw very many games at all, and that
yeah.
always helps to keep you in the higher reaches of the table, which is why we managed to sneak fifth.
Yeah,
We've drawn too many this season, I think.
I was
You
going to
know,
say
all
that
those
that is the
nil-nils.
biggest problem for me this year. When you look at where we are, dwindling down at your 11th spot, but when you look across the board at us, won 9, drawed 6, lost 9. It's we seem to be, like I said, I think that to me shows you we're a yo-yo side this season. 33 goals for, 33 goals against. So there seems to be no emphasis for me on what side's going to turn up. And you're quite right by saying what you've just said there. If it wasn't for our home performance, um, I don't think we'd be in the 11th this season. I think that
Yeah,
is the one that seemed to have scraped us by a little bit, and I think that is the thing for me. You look at you're trying to find the positives, and like I said, it seems to me, and we'll get through a couple of the presser articles in a second. Um, Seems to me as though for the first time in a very long time, well, probably since the Bruce days, some of the questions to Eddie Howe seem a little bit delicate, let's say that, and about like fans being, at unrest on social media. Eddie Howe saying he's glad
he
he's not
looked
on
shocked,
social
didn't
media. Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously he had the
he?
question about what would the opportunity, where do you think Newcastle would be if you left? That was a bit of a question. Um,
Yeah, he doesn't. I mean, he said he doesn't know what's going to happen in 4 years, next week, let alone in 4 years.
4 years,
I'm
yeah.
not sure. I'm not sure he was talking about his job, but I mean, he is in that situation where it's just a call away.
Of course it is.
Um, and I do think a nasty drift in the last 2 or 3 months of the season with nothing to play for
Yeah.
is not something that it will be allowed to coast through.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
Tanguy's in the chat there, and he's virtually saying what you said there. Our home form is better, but teams make it hard for us to win now. With I think with the low block, and I must admit there were certain times um, where I looked at Voltemada against Manchester City, and you can see exactly what he can bring into the side by dropping into that half space um, and give like a give and go with players that are then able, with a little bit of burst of pace, to get in and behind. He offers us so much with that touch. I just think the system at the moment that Eddie Howe is playing him in, playing the two wide men either side of him, leaving him so isolated with 2 or 3 players. And it doesn't matter what team you come up against, it is difficult to start showing a little bit of form. And he has dropped off. And I think there were some stats out there. He'd scored 6 in his first 12 games, and in his last 12 games, he's not hit the target at all. And like I said, I think for me, there's a few things as Eddie alluded to, was the fact that teams get to know you as a player. They do a lot of homework on you, and they've realised what he can do in and around the box, and he is being crowded out. And the trouble is with Voltemada, because of his size, he needs space. We've seen him what he can do in front of goal. He's very cute when it comes to goal, and he's certainly got the mindset to beat a goalkeeper, keeping his composure. The problem is now there's teams just don't give him that time. And when you're that size, and we saw it with Crouchy, sometimes, he's been called the new Crouchy. But I mean, he's lanky, He's not very good in the air for a lad of his height. So he's reliant on everything on the floor. And like I said, he hasn't got the pace to beat the player. So he's reliant on other players to create space for him. And when you're so far wide and you haven't got players in the midfield running into those spaces, he's got no chance, mate. The chance limitation is there in front of for all to see.
Yeah, I think I mean I did say a couple of weeks ago when why he dropped off that it was very easy once you'd watched him to know how to counteract any threat from him because you just stand next to him, you crowd him out.
Mm,
He's the overriding impression I've got of Voltemada playing for Newcastle is that he's on his knees with his arms outstretched, looking over his shoulder as the opposition is running into our half because he thinks he's been pushed over. He hasn't.
mm,
He's just met a Premier League centre half who is bigger and stronger and taking the ball off him. So, I mean, Howe said he's trying to adjust to that. So they know that that's what the issue is. I don't know how they work that through. He needs somebody alongside him. It's crying out, I would say, particularly given all of the midfield injuries, for Ramsey and Tonali to maybe be a double pivot, play
mm.
slightly more defensively, and have Voltemada in that number 10 role and put
Yeah,
Wissa within 5 yards of him. Let's see if they can work together as a pair. But mix it up, and let's try and bring the best out of the pair of them.
yeah,
If you've got an Alanga and a Barnes on either wing, then there's always an out ball on the outside. And you've got two forwards in the box for when they manage to put their crosses over instead of none, which is what
yeah.
happens when Voltemada's playing number 9.
Yeah, I must admit though, this season, I mean, like I say, we talk about losing certain players in those crucial moments, and the one thing that I was looking at yesterday, there's a couple of things. Obviously, we talk about goals from open play crosses. Last season, a total of 8, so that's a 1 in 61 ratio. We were Premier League ranked 4th. This season, we've got 1. That's 1 in 451. So we are ranked bottom of the league. And I think, we talk about where things are going wrong. And if you haven't got players that are able to get into those spaces, and again, with Voltemada dropping in deep, who's getting into the box to cover those spaces? We just don't seem to ever have somebody from the box, in and around the box, that's got that mindset and that vision when we haven't got all of the players available. And there was a really canny from Gradient Sports. This is. I'll share it on the screen and I'll talk you guys. Daily basis. So it is crazy to think that out of all our midfielders, out of all our footballers and everything else, why we cannot get we can't get the passes going. And once Bruno comes out the side, and I know people mock it, you know, everybody's saying that I've got no sound. You want to just
I
talk
hear you.
on? Um,
Yeah, I can hear you though
oh,
on my
okay.
side. But yeah,
I'll just check.
I mean, obviously it's difficult, isn't it, when Bruno's come out of the team? He is
Mm,
fantastic, and he raises everybody else's performance as well. Um, uh, we still haven't won when he hasn't played, which is a nasty statistic. Although we put a fabulous performance in against PSG without him, and we could have won that. I just think that Eddie saying he might be fit for the weekend is I'm hopeful when he said that,
mm, mm.
but he's never missed this long before, so you really don't know how tough his knee injury is. Um, but yeah, I mean, what I'm missing when that stat you did on the crosses, I'm remembering all those goals when it's either Anthony Gordon or it was Miggy that was stealing in at the back post and finishing things off.
Mm.
And we've not had anybody run through like that, probably because we're not breaking as quickly as we used to. Um, we are a transitional team. We're not breaking forward as quickly as we used to, which ironically means that we still have maybe it's athleticism thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, for me, passing a football. It doesn't matter where you are. It should be one of the most simplest things you could ever do. And again, I love looking at teams that are fluid. I love watching teams when we're on our game. I don't think there's another team that can match us. That's how it is. You know what I mean? As you rightly said, we got beat by Barcelona, but the goal that we scored against Barcelona, was class. It was all lovely one-touch football in the passing lanes, down that right-hand side, crossed the ball into Anthony Gordon. Yeah, Anthony Gordon scuffed it a little bit, but we got the goal from it. So like I said, on our game, even against Manchester City, you could see the options and the ability to get the ball in and behind against a team that are willing to press you. It's there. Unfortunately, we couldn't hit the barn door. I mean, that could have been such a closer game, if I'm honest with you, if we'd have literally took our chances. I'm not saying we'd have got anywhere near winning it, but it would have certainly made it a little bit more of an entertaining and a confidence
Well,
builder.
I certainly think that who was it missed the first one? Was it Gordon that missed the first one, or
Gordon.
Willock that missed the? If Gordon had
No,
took
it was Willock, wasn't
the
it, on 8 minutes? Yeah,
if we'd equalised within 2 minutes of them scoring, I think that might have given us a bit more belief, and we could have given
yeah,
them a better game. But
absolutely.
that's all. If my aunt was a man and not a woman, she'd be
Yeah,
wonderful.
exactly. That's the one, isn't it? That's the one. I mean, like I say, for me, there's so much that Eddie and the backroom staff and you can say. I think if I'm right in saying, I think it was Choppy who's put a question into us. Do you think Piff didn't give Howe any money because Newcastle ain't getting a new manager? Oh, sorry, are getting a new manager in the summer? I don't know.
It's very short-term thinking. If they're looking at a long-term investment,
Yeah,
they've got a director of football and a CEO there to approve the spending. They could bring players in, whoever the manager is. If they needed I think they needed a fullback and they needed a centre half. They don't need somebody like, we're not Man City. You don't go and buy Gahey, but you can shop around. I'm sure that they've got a long list of players, young players that they've scouted that they could have made enquiries of and brought some in. And it might not have been their first choice,
mm,
but what's the problem if they come in and they play 10 or 15 games and then they lose their place because the injuries are recovered? Then if you have to move them on again after 12, 18 months, you're going to get your money back, but it addresses the problems that we have now. We are Lewis Hall twisting his ankle away from struggling
absolutely.
to get a defence out.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say to Boki. The problem is when you're running constantly on gas and I'm saying on fumes, because you haven't got anybody coming in. And again, I don't know why when you're losing as heavily as we were against Manchester City, why you didn't give the kids a run out for 20 minutes. It baffles me. I'm sure and again, there was a lot of discussion around him and Graham Jones having a bit of an altercation in the dugout. And I think the one thing I have to throw at you before we, say I'm going to have a deep dive into the presser in a minute, and I apologise for those people probably listening thinking, where's the presser? The presser's been and gone for anybody that's still thinking that we're doing it live.
If you want to summarise the presser, though, it's Eddie Howe sort of going, I'm trying
I
my
don't know.
best
Yeah, exactly.
because things are happening
It's,
around him. So
yeah,
reactive.
absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. We have got to try and get something better than we've got at the moment. Now, where the answer is to that, we certainly haven't got it. We see a lot of issues, but we don't have the answers to those issues. And unfortunately, by the sounds of, again, what I've heard from Radio this morning, neither does he. So, he still believes that there's a team there that can compete across every competition. And again, the one thing that really annoys me with any coach, and it's not just Eddie Howe, is when they say, we've got enough players until there's injuries. But if you have too many, then it's hard one way. If you have too little and you get injuries, it's hard the other. You have to find that fine balance. Now, we always used to say, if you have two players in every area, it gives you some coverage. And then you look at versatility players that can, the Moyleys of this world, the Lewis Halls, if you like, of this world, the Jacob Murphys, who can do a job. I'm not saying they are perfect. I mean, you can always throw Burn in there, but that'll just somebody will throw bricks at me if I say that. But you have got players out there that are willing to go and do a job for you. You know what I mean? And I always look at the squad as saying, once you lose some of your main assets, and I think, like I say, once you lose Bruno out that middle of the park, we become a different unit. And Eddie has alluded to that. Then you lose your warrior, if you like, somebody who's going to fight for every ball when J7 goes. So again, against Man City, you had Tonali in the middle, orchestrating the middle. You had Willock who goes forward, and you had Ramsey who goes back. So who's in the midfield? I mean, literally, you know what it looked like for me? You know when you see the Japanese police in the middle of the road bringing players on? It literally looked like somebody, he was on the middle of the island waving the traffic through because he had no support whatsoever. And again, you know, when I look at Graham Jones and Eddie Howe arguing with each other, and Eddie Howe asking Graham Jones to talk to Voltemada because he hadn't got Tyndall because he was suspended, obviously. So he's having an argument with Tyndall because he wasn't happy with what Voltemada was doing. You know, you start questioning, you're the coach. Pep goes and has a rollick, you know, gives the lads on the bench a bit of a talking to because he wants information, you know. So he's asking the analysts, and it's Pep who comes back onto the side of the pitch and dictates what's going on. We need that from Eddie Howe. Sometimes I don't think he's got enough nastiness in him to become that manager, you know, that player that he's going to get that extra level out of his players on the field of play.
Yeah, well, I mean, I dispute going right back to your original point that, and he made this point, didn't he, in his presser, that if you have too many, you know, if you don't have enough, you're struggling. But if you have too many, it gives you a different problem. It only gives him a problem then that he's got to rotate his team a bit more than he would otherwise have to, and that's not a problem. That's preserving the fitness of all of the squad members. And this is sort of underpinning the lie, if you like, that we have a 25-man Premier League squad, which we do, but Eddie Howe only picks from about 17 or 18 of them because he's not rotating properly. And it's come back to bite us now. We're having to play players that, or we daren't put Alex Murphy in. We daren't try Sahar. We daren't try Neve, who've sat on the bench dozens of times and never ever got a sniff of first team football because they're not rotated. There have been games where it was the Everton game when we're 4 up. You could have brought them all on to give them the last 20 minutes of that game. They were on the bench, but they never got a sniff. So they're not tested at all. So we won't risk them. And now they're going to be forced into playing because they're going to run out of players. I wouldn't be surprised if Murphy starts somewhere tomorrow if he wants to give Chow a rest, and he'll be thrust into a super important Premier League game in front of the 50,000 starting to become disillusioned fans. If he slips like Chow did and gives a goal away in the first 10 minutes, he'll never ever be welcomed on the pitch again. It's going to be so high pressure when these guys come on. I would chuck Sahar straight into it. He's 19, he plays for England under 21s. I've never seen him play. But I tell you what, he can't be as ineffective as Trippier is. And certainly Trippier that's limping when he comes onto the pitch, like he will be tomorrow, is not going to be effective at all. But with Miley injured, with Livramento injured, there's nobody else to back.
Yeah, that's what Betty Boy's saying. He's saying exactly that. What was the harm in Eddie playing Shahar versus Manchester City? Trippier could barely walk at the end of the game, and he'll be picked again tomorrow. Mismanagement of squad is really showing now, and it's exactly what you've just said
Benny,
there, mate.
Benny, I agree entirely with what you say. I think Trippier will get picked again, but I mean,
Crazy.
I can't believe Sofasor gave Trippier a 7.1 score for the game against Manchester City, but I didn't see anything for that. He had a good free kick, which was easily saved, but it was on target. But the rest of what Trippier did, I just saw him chasing the ball. He doesn't show up in
Yeah,
any of the attacks in the front line, and he's missing in action when it comes to having to try to defend his fullback position. So where is he?
yeah,
He's chasing
exactly.
10 yards behind the game because he's not fit for purpose
Yeah, I've
now.
just had
Sorry,
a
Kieran. I love
message.
Kieran Trippier, by the way. What a signing!
Oh, and me. But like I said,
But
I think
there comes a point
go
where
on, mate.
you've just got to say, look, mate, you've tipped over the edge now, and you're a liability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I said. I mean, I'd rather. I know this sounds really bad because to me, he's probably been one of, if not the best right back I've seen at Newcastle. You know, he's been up there, especially the one coming through the door to make this happen. You know, this turn of event, if you like. So I want him to leave the club on a crest of a wave rather than because you know this is the way we talk and think of fans. It's the leaving picture, and everybody's just going to be talking about Kieran Trippier as if you know the last time they saw him. They won't remember the time where he was absolutely great and pushing the club forward. It'll be that lasting picture that they get where he's literally treading water on the way back. I have just had some breaking news. Thanks, Connor. This is being reported live from the Chronicle. Sandro Tonali, his agent, drops Newcastle United's summer transfer bombshell as Arsenal put on alert. And again, it's just the saga that it's not going to go away. Sandro Tonali's agent has dropped a bombshell on Newcastle United by admitting that they will hold transfer discussions with the club in the summer. There you go. There's a lot more behind that, but it does look, as we all thought behind the scenes, if I'm honest with you, that there's no smoke without that fire. And when the agent was saying no, there's no truth in it, then obviously somebody else was saying he was offered by the agent to transfer to Arsenal. So I do believe, like I said, I do read a lot from the papers, and there's only a few that I find credible. And like I say, the one in the Athletic seems always close to the truth for me. And like I say, there you go. You've heard it here. That is directly from the live Chronicle, and it must be something that's been spoke about afterwards. Chris Oskins has put a question into us. How long do we have to go over this team has dropped off the staff, have no clue how to solve it or win a game right now. I'm sorry, we need a new manager with top staff. I'm seeing no solution. And again, I can't disagree with you, mate. It just seems as though we are all scratching our heads. Go on, mate.
Tonali news is expected, isn't it? No smoke
Yeah,
without fire,
yeah,
we said, even if it was being denied. But learn from last summer, lean into it. Let's have Tonali signed by Arsenal on July the 4th or something,
yeah. Hmm.
and have a measured, considered 3 months to best spend that cash that comes in to strengthen the squad. Instead of it being burning a hole in our pocket in the last couple of days and buying whoever the hell we could get our hands on, which
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not saying Voltemada is a bad buy, Wissa is a bad buy. I think we overpaid for those two and Ramsey, if I'm
yeah,
honest. We paid over the top for them. Um, but yeah, let's lean into it. I'm a big advocate of trading being the way that we close the gap on these teams ahead of us. We need to get a squad that can qualify for the Champions League, and the cash that comes from that also compensates from having a ground that holds 20,000 less than these big guys. We need to do that as much as possible in order to compete.
yeah,
The ground
yeah.
and the ground will come.
Well, I mean, Simon Jordan, love or hate him, he said exactly, where Newcastle haven't really kick-started. And again, you've got to question why we haven't got sponsors in certain areas. If they're starting or wanting to close the gap between the elite sides and ourselves, there's lots of questions still appearing behind the scenes, and that is a big worry for me. And it's not so much about PIF being interested. I mean, we know there's a big tournament coming up in Saudi very soon, and I would imagine they are gearing up to cover a lot of that. And they've also got their hands in a lot of other teams, which, by all accounts, according to Martin, who was on from the Mancunian Way, he was suggesting that they are trying to get rid of, and by the end of 26, they won't have those other teams involved. And again, is that because they want to buy another club? As we've said, there was talks about them going to Brazil. There's been talks about them tampering in and around Europe. And again, whether that's got something to do with the Newcastle feeder club, where we can send our players on loan, as a lot of, again, the elite teams do these days, I'm not so sure. But I do get worried the fact that at this present moment in time, when you think that a new stadium is going to be the only way forward, or at least the ground should have been nailed on virtually the first time, I would say the first year that they bought the club. A lot of these issues that they're starting to see now behind the scenes, that should have already been in the pipeline. And the only thing I can think of is the way Newcastle on the field of play under Eddie Howe, and again, you've got to give credit where credit's due, went on that trajectory, finishing fourth in the Premier League, getting into the Champions League. I think everybody went, oh my God, because I didn't think it was expected
You've arrived,
by the
yeah.
board, And I think that literally curtailed the plan, because they thought it was going to be a 5 to 10 year plan. And now, obviously, under this new CEO, David Hopkinson, he's saying 10 years is too long. Well, we've already been 4 years. We're nearly 5 years. So, we need to be getting, our fingers well and truly going now on the pulse and working the system, because at the minute, we are a country mile behind the elite squads commercially. Even though we're growing, that will plateau. It always does, unless you get something else in the pipeline. And you're never going to catch up with them unless you change something. And at the minute, I think we're just treading water. So it'll be interesting. Well, anyway, let's crack on with what's been in the. Like I say, I've written notes. It ain't going to be word for word, so we're just going to pick the bones through something that come out. So it's upcoming fixtures and team focus was the order of the day. Newcastle faces an important Premier League week. Brentford at home, following by Spurs away. Emphasis on refocusing after a tough run of games and maintaining a positive mindset despite recent defeats. The importance of returning home after a series of away fixtures was highlighted as a morale booster. And that's why I asked you about, his own form, the way forward for Newcastle at the minute in this. This is a category that, I hate saying, becomes a must-win with the amount of away games coming behind it.
Yeah, you're right. And we've got to improve the away form to have any chance because, but the home form is kind of like an anchor, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That we can try and develop from. It's hard looking at it today, but let's just say that Miley and Bruno are fit to start tomorrow. Gordon's hamstring tweak means that he actually can come back for Tottenham. And Joelinton's had injections in his groin, hasn't he? And it wasn't a serious injury. So Joelinton can come back in. And suddenly we've got 4 or 5 more squad members to choose from to be able to rest the
Exactly.
guys who've done so well to hold the fort. Dan Burn already came back in to give us an alternative centre half. Well, he played all 3 of them
All three of them,
on,
exactly.
on 2 of the 3 games. But it may be that we are having our injured players return I know Shah's not coming back. Oh, maybe he will for that last 4 games, which is the one we need 4 wins in, and look very winnable games for our running. But yeah, maybe that might be why Howe said, "Don't bother buying anybody. I don't need anybody. I know that Joelinton's here in 10 days, and Bruno and Miley will be okay on the week." Botman came back after flu or something, didn't he? We didn't
Yeah.
really know why he'd been rested,
Well,
but
they
you know,
reckon
he
he
looked
took a
okay.
knock, didn't he? That's why he was on the bench. Apparently, he
Yeah,
took a knock and he was a little bit sore, and they didn't want to risk it again. This is what you keep thinking about. Is as you said, they've played all of our available centre halves over the last 2 out of 3 games, and all of a sudden, where's your next one? If you're not rotating, if you're not going to bring these players in and out, and even to the point of Louis Hall, I do find it incredible the fact that we haven't given that kid who's come back after a few injuries any chance of recovery.
we took
I
him off
think
at
it's only a
half
matter of
time
time.
against City, didn't he? Took him
Sitter,
off at half
yeah,
time against City.
yeah,
Um, uh, and Jacob Murphy suddenly became a left back, which was
yeah.
bonkers.
I mean,
But I
what
mean,
what does it show you
to,
though? What does it tell any youngster at Newcastle at the minute?
well, they must be so depressed sitting on the bench. I mean, having to get up early and travel and all the rest of it, with no prospect of playing at all. And
Mm,
I know the first couple of times it's all really exciting, but if you're Alex Murphy, I mean, he's travelled
yeah,
Europe. He's
yeah,
travelled Europe and all around the UK, and he's managed to do 2 lots of 10 minutes or something. Um, and he's
it's great.
trained with the first team squad for 18 months. It's not
Yeah,
like he doesn't know the patterns or the organisation or anything. And in my view, he's looked okay when he's come on. I'd far rather give him the last 20 minutes of games that we're playing and have Hall available for the first 70 minutes of all of the games through to the end of the season,
mm,
instead of play Hall for the whole of the time and find that he's crocked at the start of March and we don't see him again till next year. Um, yeah, but we've got players that have done that, sat on the bench and done all of the miles, and they've never ever been brought on. That's what I mean about how having a 25-man Premier League squad, 5 or 6
yeah,
are out through injury, and then so of those 20 players plus half a dozen youngsters, he's still only picking 17 or 18 players.
mm,
It can't be
yeah.
right. It's not rotation. It isn't
No,
rotation, and we
and
see other
the other
teams do
thing,
it.
yeah, exactly. The other thing you got to think of though is there's two sides to the coin, isn't there? As a young'un, as you've said, you're traveling, you're getting up, you're doing all the odd yards, you're doing all the training, and then one, you're not available for the under 21s game. So your development hits a bit of a crossroads. You're no longer on the loan list for teams that have come in and inquired about you because the manager thinks that you're a valuable part of the squad. But again, if unless you're going to be utilised, sitting on the bench will only give you so much. Nothing else. It won't make you a better footballer. And that's what I said. You look at and it was really nice, if I'm honest with you, because it was something that we mentioned yesterday. Um, Eddie Howe confirmed it today. Giving Louis Saul a run when he wasn't ready, and you saw he wasn't the footballer he is now when he first come into the team. What's the difference? He's already gave young players, a chance,
Yeah.
and now all of a sudden he seems to have taken a step back, which only fuels the fire to what the lads were saying about, is it because Mitchell's brought these kids into the side? And is there a bit of a, I can't believe that, but it does add that fuel to the fire.
Well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, one or two of them are starting to vote with their feet, aren't they? That lad Heffernan, who was
Heffernan.
from Milan, I think,
Yeah,
Irish
yeah.
fella come from Milan, can't get any further than the 21s. He's just gone, hasn't
You've
he? He's
got,
gone to
yeah.
Falkirk or something because can't see any prospect of breaking into the first team
But does that
in
mean,
a time where we have aging, creaking, knackered centre halves.
mm,
He can't see any prospect of getting into the first team because his mate Alex Murphy has sat on the bench for 18 months and never had a sniff. Can't blame the lad from going on. I don't know if he's good enough or not. But he had the sort of pedigree which sounded as Milan had picked him up as a kid. That sounds like there's something there
Something
to be
there.
able to come on and give Chow 10 minutes break every
Exactly.
other game.
Every other game. That's right. I mean, like I said, yeah, we seen them in pre-season when they were absolutely, bit part, if you like, and you can see that they were a way off the level that you need them to be. But that again, you can't just judge them on one game. And the unfortunate thing about it, there's no stability in the under-21 side at all, with the comings and goings of different coaches. It's like sometimes they'll play this system. Literally 6 weeks later, there's another coach and it's another system. So there's no continuity. Um, and it's been pretty awful, if I'm honest with you, for any of the lads. And again, you talk about playing with confidence. The lads are sitting at the bottom or towards the bottom of the Premier League too. There's no confidence in that under 21 side. So the bounce you're going to get, that little bit of confidence that being picked and selected for the first team is going to give you, after a certain length of time, that's going to dwindle and it's just going to go and fade away. There's a lot of chat, and again, I don't want to go through, any name call or anything about what Tonali's agent is going to be doing. Like I said, don't forget these guys get paid a lot of money, agents wise, for doing business, and I don't know where this is going to lead to. I just think that this could be. Well, I just hope it doesn't go into another Tonali situation, Isak situation.
To be honest, can you
Somebody put
blame?
in there. Yeah, hold on.
Go on.
Gavin, I think was the one who put it in the chat, and forgive me if I'm wrong, Gav. He said, "Is the Tonali play a way of him being a lesser attraction regarding his cost if he is for sale? Is he going through the motions, just pouring a shirt on and dictating a lesser price for himself, so it's easier to get through the door?"
I don't think you can do that. I mean, if you've ever played football and you're not putting it all in, if you're not playing, if you're coasting, you look bloody awful because
Yeah.
you can't do it half-assed. You just look like you're not taking part, or you're playing. What I was going to say was, you cannot really blame Tonali if he's come off for the project and he's been involved and become a crowd favourite and he's won a Carabao Cup, but he's sitting through this season. You can't blame him from looking around. He's only got what, 7 or 8 years at the top to win his competitions, and he's been here for 3.5, 4 years now.
Yeah.
The fact that he signed an extension to his contract when he was on his ban means that we should get a decent fee for him, and I think you've just got to lean into that. You've got to lean into that and bite the bullet, take the cash at the start of the transfer market, and then you've got plenty of time to weigh up the options and invest your money wisely.
Yeah.
Somebody earlier in the comments was talking about ignoring the Premier League proven overpriced guys. Well, that's had mixed results, shall we say,
Yeah.
kindly. But when we've gone shopping on properly coached young lads and found a Bruno and found a Botman, found a Livramento and a Hall, then that's really money well spent. That's what we need to be doing: buying, developing, selling at a profit.
Absolutely.
Not for
Yeah, absolutely.
everybody, but I mean, in a measured way. That's
We
bringing
have
in your money to spend on new players every summer if you do it right. And Tonali could be this summer's one.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, we've seen the way Man City started with the likes of Mark Hughes and all the managers coming in just to start the ball rolling, bringing in individual players that they thought fit a system. It took them a few years to get on the feet. And like I said, I think I never thought that Eddie Howe, even when he was signed, was the final person in this journey, if you like. I always thought there was potentially somebody else that could come on board post Eddie Howe. But I think that second season shocked everybody. Well, it shocked me as a fan, so I'm
Yeah, I
sure it
loved
must have
it.
shocked the boardroom.
I
So,
loved it.
well, absolutely. And that's what I said. All of a sudden it's like, wow, all of it, we are starting to smack with the big boys. And like I said, the CEO yesterday of the Premier League saying every 6 years they want a new name on the Premier League title. And again, that's something that really boils my you know what, because I can't see that ever happening, especially when you restrict, you put constraints on certain individuals, on teams within the Premier League to join those big boys at the top. Where are you going to have a change of those elite teams? You're not, are you? They're always going to gain commercially.
We have got the ability to catch up over time, and the way of doing that is to trade. I'm broadcasting from the shop today. I don't know if you spotted.
It's great.
I don't have
Yeah, it's
parrot.
great. Look, nice
The reason
parrot
I'm
behind you.
The reason I'm in early today, though, is that I've got a delivery coming and it's just arrived, which is rather embarrassing. I'm waiting when he opens the door and starts talking to me for me to go, I'm broadcasting to the nation. We'll see if that works or not.
Yeah, live on the radio across the northeast. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Right then, let's get on with what he says regarding the updates. Matey, if you need to just go off for a second.
So I think he'll just...
You sure? You're
in.
good?
Yeah.
Right then, so he spoke about the injuries and the squad updates, and he said about Anthony Gordon suffered a hamstring issue, and he's likely to miss the Brentford match, but it's not expected to be out long term. We've heard that so many times.
Michael will be very pleased because he thought if Gordon turned up to play against Brentford that he was swinging the lead and he was embarrassed to be on the pitch, and that's not the attitude that we want from one of our main
senior
men
pros
that night.
Yeah, senior pros.
So in a way, he's kind of like Michael. I'm kind of pleased that he was injured.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's not a serious one because I want him back. I've want him back for Tottenham.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is crazy when you look at. I mean, JRW89 there. The whole issue with squad depth feels like robbing Peter to pay Paul. We've had this season after season, spinning so many plates. It's a complete joke, says JRWS. And again, you know, it's something that we said. Sometimes certain coaches, and again, I'll put Eddie on that mantle because he's certainly that. It's the tried, the tried and tested seem to be the one that he goes to all the time. And it's crazy how that happens. You know, when you look at, he wants so many different players in the squad, but then he's frightened to rotate them. It's a bit bad.
I'll be open around about 11 o'clock though, because I can't stop and look after you, unfortunately.
Look at him listening to
him to the bosses. I do apologise. Yeah.
Then he see, this is what we like on this channel. Yeah, exactly. This is exactly what we like on this channel. Life doesn't stop. Just as Eddie Howe would say, you still have to work. With Creep having, I'm just having a quick look at the chat while you guys are working in the background. I am going to have to mute him though for a second. Geordie up north says he'll take 100 million for Tonali. Well, like I say, in his current form, will you get 100 million? That's the question. Gavin saying selling your best player every season will not end well. Yes, trade, but not your best. Well, you know, like I said, are we an elite side? And I think the problem we have at this present moment in time, it's an opinion. It's not fact. And I think, you know, when you look at something subjective, you're going to have so many people say, yes, you are. So many people say, no, you're not. And unfortunately, Newcastle are, at this present moment in time, I suppose, only big in the northeast, as everybody else keeps alluring to. And it's like what we need to start doing, as, you know, he was saying, Hopkinson was saying, we need to be a global figure. And only until that day comes, will you get that that system going, I suppose. And we will then start to be able to knock on the doors of the bigger teams commercially. And I think until then, we have to start being a bit more Brighton-esque when it comes to player removal, bringing players out, bringing players in. But that all comes down to a scout and a scouting operation. And again, we go back to what Mitchell was saying. Is it the fact that it's that poor, that what Mitchell was saying? It's not fit for purpose. We need to be expanding our knowledge of Africa, South America, bringing in these, gems for around about £10 million and getting the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s million pounds for them if they don't make the grade. And if they do make the grade, nurture them for 2 or 3 seasons, and then, as Brighton did with the likes of Caicedo and the like, McAllister, move them to the bigger clubs. That's not absolutely fine, as long as you've got a replacement coming the
Sweep
other
him in the
way.
door there.
He's still busy, so I'll mute him again. So let him do his biz. He did talk about Bruno. He talked about Bruno and saying that he was getting closer to being fit. He trained apparently on Wednesday while they were travelling, and he was the one that seems very hopeful to return for Brentford. And again, I think that'll be great news. Lewis Miley's injury is not deemed to be serious, even though there's lots of question marks behind this knee injury that he seems to have suffered. Some
Well, he
say
said
it
it.
is. Go on,
He
mate.
said he said it was more of the tightness on his thigh that was affecting his knee, didn't he? So it might not be a knee; it might just be a muscular thing. A dead
Yeah, but
leg, I read.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. There's so much now. When you get a tightness across the thigh, that could also be a ligament issue, because obviously ligaments come from muscular to bone. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's
you
true.
have got the tendons and ligaments and everything else that's going on. So you've got again. I heard that it was probably something to do with a ligament. As nobody's heard nothing. It seems really strange. But fingers
Mm.
crossed for Lewis Miley, because, like I say, it certainly puts us a little bit of a chink in the armour when it comes to a variety of places that kid can go and play. And that's only good going forward. Obviously, then he talked about the squad depth. Is considered sufficient, according to Eddie Howe, when fully fit. But what team, can I ask you, Ian, what team have you ever heard of as a fully fit squad competing on all 4 stages in all competitions throughout the season?
Let's be honest. There's always somebody or 2 or 3 go down in pre-season,
Yeah,
and you start the season without your full squad. So if you, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think all of that spending last year did strengthen our squad. The squad is deeper, but it needs to be deeper again to be able to cope with competing in 4 different competitions. I think you need all of your kids that don't need to be registered um, away from. You need 25 players as well as all of those kids that don't need to be registered to be able to have enough to be able to go deep into the competitions.
mm,
And if we were on 14 or 15 pros the first time, we're on about 17 or 18 pros now because we have deepened the squad. But I think we need to do it once or twice more to get enough players to be able to do what Manchester City do, which is choose their moment where they blood their youngsters because they've always got players to step into cover for injured players. Maybe not. Maybe isn't a Rodri uh,
yeah, that's the thing, isn't it?
substitute, but they've got players who can play there. Um, Played on Wednesday against us. Forget his name. Is it Gonzalez that plays there?
Mm,
He's not a bad player, but he's a seasoned, experienced professional that can step into that breach. It's not just a kid out of the reserves or
yeah,
a fullback who's converted into midfield, although O'Reilly did that very well.
I'm going to say,
Um,
yeah, he did, didn't he?
yeah, that's what we need, and that comes over time. We'll have to go through. But if sell a Tonali and buy 3 or 4 players out of that, development players that will come through to give us 2 first teamers and 2 squad players. But that doesn't happen in one summer. So that,
Yeah.
you know, as you say, there's always peaks and troughs, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you guys saying here, there's Brighton made Champions League. Why not we follow a club with results I think that's don't want. they're also sitting lower in the league than us. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's more the fact that you can follow a blueprint, but until you're at this present moment in time, again, we talk about where the club's going. When Piff took over, there was no sellable assets, none whatsoever in this side. There was lots of players that weren't fit to be in this side when they took over. So, when I say weren't fit, I don't mean that in an injury state. I mean, I'm on about a technical ability side of things. Now, you've got to start building a model where you're able to move players on without the hindrance of the club being affected on the field of play. Now, what Brighton have been able to do, and if you look at in the past, your Bournemouths, your Brentfords, your Crystal Palaces, yes, they're never going to be fighting for Champions League. Crystal Palace won the FA Cup and the Community Shield, remember? So with their squad until it was decimated, and then it's a rebuilding process. Now, we aren't those clubs because they haven't got the crowd that we've got coming through our doors, and that will grow. What I'm saying is you have to use the blueprint and the model that they utilise to close the gap. And once that gap, we always say, mind the gap to those around us, our brothers. And unfortunately, that's turned against us now, hasn't it? It's mind the gap the other way. But I mean, and that's what I said. It's not a case of following them per se. It's about utilising what they do well and then moving your players on. And as we've seen, it's no point having players at the club, your Isaacs, potentially your Tonalis, if they're not going to perform. And I have not seen, and like I say, it's really funny when people hold candles and show a lot of light to some players because of a name. I only show light and a respect when I see him graft and when I see, even if the result isn't there, if you've seen the effort and the willingness to try, that's get a response from me rather than I'm just going to give up. The Anthony Gordons of the world where your arm goes out, sitting on the floor, doesn't want to chase back, things like that. That for me ain't a player.
Yeah, well, Tonali could never be faulted for effort. Even now, when he's running around, he's still covering a lot of ground. He has gone off from where he was last year, but he's not playing in the same sort of team, is he?
Well, that's what I'm saying. And that's why I made a comment about him not being a leader, because leaders learn and show by example. Some players bounce off players around them, and that's Tonali. Tonali can play really well. He's a cracking technician. He's a cracking player. When he's got players around him, maybe that he believes in. Maybe that, he thinks if I give you the ball, I can get out of this position and move forward because you're not going to lose it. At the minute, yes, he works right. He's great, but he's static. You look at him going into the box or any further forward from maybe a low, an 8, a low 10 position in the middle of the park, and that's what you get, unless he's taking set pieces, corners, and things like that. But apart from that, he's very much. I'm going to sit back in case they break on us. I'm not going to venture forward. And to me, Eddie Howe is wasting an absolute beast of a player by actually playing him where he is at the moment as a 6. Because as good as he is, he's not a natural 6. He'll do it, but he ain't a natural. And like I say, when you look at somebody who plays there, and it's like one of, for me, like a metronome. It's like tick, tock, tick, and it just goes and goes, and it's fluid. He sets the tone of the team. Tonali doesn't set the tone of the team at all. He never looks under pressure. Now, be honest with me. When you watch Tonali under pressure from any opposition, does he look comfortable on the ball?
I think he gets himself enough time to be able to play the ball out.
So,
do you not?
No, I don't, mate. No, I often find that Tonali get under pressure, and again, we put that snippet up earlier, and apologise for me going silent. I don't know what that was. I seem to have gone silent, and it shows you in there, from that centre pin being a player that's the furthest back in a midfield 3, right? You should have far more passes or far more touches in the ball and be in that top 20 bracket. Now, if you look at Voltamada, often only gets you 11 touches of the ball in and around one touch in the box. There's certain areas of the field where you're not expected to have the ball as often, right? But in the middle of the three, being that low point, I expect him to be in the top 20 for successful passes, and that worries me.
And he's not.
No.
I think you must have shown that when I was otherwise engaged with my delivery. I'm surprised at that, but you're right. If he's the number 6, if he's the pivot, it should all go through him. Really, he's the outball for all the centre halves that have won it and want somewhere to go.
Yeah.
And you should be spraying it around. That's
Yeah.
absolutely right. I'm sure he'll get
Yeah.
more touches when Bruno plays alongside him.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? When you see the likes of Bruno's and even Miley, who's comfortable on the ball. When you look at the stats post match, when you have Bruno, Miley, and Tonali, it's Bruno and Miley who have got the pass rates. It's not Tonali, and that's what I said. Are we playing and utilising Tonali in the right area? And like I said, when you watch him for Italy, again, I don't really watch a lot of the European matches when he was at Milan and things like that. But he used to play on the left side of that centre three for Italy, and he looks really comfortable because when he goes in the 10 role and he's running from that inside left position of the opposition penalty box, he's naturally coming onto his right foot. Now, we've seen him in the past where he's got that touch and ability around the box, the opposition box, to create problems because he's got a good shot on him. There was a hell of a stat that I read the other day. And I know not everybody's into stats, but talking about low blocks now becoming the ever part of every game. Let me just see if I can. I'm not going to put it on the screen because for some unknown reason I'm going off air. But so when you look at the 2018-19, this is like percentage of XG over performance from outside the box in the Premier League, right? So from 2018-19 season, it was 9.3. That was efforts outside the box. Then it dropped in and around the 2021 season from 1.9, minus 1.9 to minus 4.7. That's when it was more pet football, trying that pretty football to get into the 6-yard box before they finished. So it dropped behind the 0 percentile. Then in 21-22 season, it jumped up to 10%. And now, missing all the other seasons because it doesn't really make any sense. So from 10%, 25-26 season, it's now at 28.6%. All because of the low blocks that is now being performed week in, week out with our opposition. So if you've not got players that are willing to take a shot and a punt from outside the box, the chances of your XG goes down dramatically because by the time you've got within the 6-yard area or the 12-yard area, there's no space to shoot anymore. There's so many bodies in front of you that's blocked. That's it. And like I said, for me, I think a lot of teams have got the making of Newcastle on the high press now because it's just a ball over the top. And unfortunately, we do look very lax when it comes to facing our own goal running back.
Yeah, they are disturbing stats, and we're not the first chat that we've had. We're wishing that some Newcastle players would actually pull the trigger sometimes. You've seen Hall score from outside the box, and Shah always loves a punt from outside the box, but they don't try it very often at all. And I don't know if that is because they're going to give up possession. But to me, if you're having a shot from outside the box through a low block, you have as much chance of clipping a defender and getting a corner from it anyway. So I do think and I don't mean Harvey Barnes running along the edge of the box and having a shot against a defender who's 6 inches away from him. We've seen lots of shots that are charged down. Somebody running onto the ball and having a shot where the ball is actually going to lift off the ground. Yeah, I mean they're great goals as well.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean
Uh,
I do think it's been coached out of people to take that risk.
well, it certainly coached out of Eddie Howe's team because that's what he said. He doesn't believe that there's many players within his squad, and he said this in a previous presser that he believes they have the natural ability to shoot from outside the area. So why take the risk? Um, and I often think if you don't buy a raffle ticket, what's the chance of you winning the prize?
Agree entirely.
Um,
Agree entirely.
uh, I,
Miley's got a fabulous shot on him as well. Saw
he
that goal
has,
against Bromley a year or two ago.
yeah, absolutely.
But he won't shoot. He'll always
No,
look to play it square,
but
and he
like I
should.
said, the 33 goals we've scored this season, only one from Bruno has come outside the area.
Yeah, I think he mishit that one as well, didn't he?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me. Eddie Howe goes on to talk about player confidence and performance. Um, Confidence amongst players is a focal point. Tough losses to big teams and a congested fixture schedule doesn't help the cause. Nick Voltemada's goal drought discussed. Management emphasises patience, development, and continued support for young players new to the league. And he, like I said, he goes on to discuss the fact that he started off really well because nobody knew him as a player. Scored 6 in his first 12, but like I say, he's not really scored anything in his last 12. And it's because it's got harder. The league itself has got harder. The game itself has got harder, and people just know how he plays and how to nullify his abilities, if you like. And like I say, how often have we said he's always seems to have two players around him, which should mean there's another player spare somewhere. It's just a shame it's the goalkeeper. Anyway, you talk about Anthony Elanga's form, and he says capped by his first goal, which is great. Which he did say something apart from this though. I wasn't 100% sure was true. He did say it has been a bright spot, and he hoped to boost his belief and output. But he said he believed, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong here, Ian. But he believed that he's seen something out of Anthony Elanga that he's seen all season. Um, Certainly something that maybe he's been watching the same game as Win
No,
because I
it's
haven't seen
funny.
it.
It's funny because there was a did they produce the goals from 2025 in a reel that went onto the website? So if you just look at them scoring all of the goals
Hmm.
this season, there are a number of goals, largely in the Champions League, it's got to be said, where Alanga looks fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a fast run, it's speed, it's a great cross. But that's it. That's it. Everything else is being very nondescript. Now we spotted in the last few games that he's looked better when he's come on and done his cameos, and we were crying out for him to get a few starts. And I thought he did all right against Liverpool because he started that game, didn't he?
Hmm.
But yeah, he didn't start against Manchester City. But when he came on, I thought did he start against Man City? Can't remember.
I can't recall, mate, to be fair.
I can't remember. Anyway, he was very good against Manchester City. He deserved his goal. He took it really, really well. I'm hoping that you can see that again before the end of the season. What I have been impressed with is his defensive work. He's very quick coming back. Um, he's very quick at coming back. He followed Kirkes all the way in that Liverpool game and did a lot of useful work. Again, he's bailing Trippier out. That's why.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've seen bits from Alanga, and if he's starting to come good, he's only repeating the pattern of Anthony Gordon taking 6 months to settle in, Lewis Hall taking 6 months to settle in. Uh, like Howe said, for everybody, when they've started this season, they've had no time to do any training really. It's all about rest and recovery and then preparation for the next game when you're playing
Mm.
every third or fourth day. So they've not been able to do very much on the training ground.
Mm.
And that shows a bit, doesn't it? That shows
It
them not
certainly
being
does.
able to accommodate how Nick Voltemada plays. In Visser having played since the start of November, but still not looking 3 months later like he's match fit.
No,
Um,
it's incredible, isn't it?
we've got issues, haven't we? Issues.
Yeah, definitely. Geordie up in the north in Edinburgh is saying, "Can I ask what happened to the Manchester City charges?" Well, nobody knows, mate. Whilst they sign some menu, etc., all we get is silence. Yeah, well, like I said, it's taken them 8 months, I believe, to give Leicester City the charges, and it's taken them over 2 years to try and sort out the 115, and we've still heard nothing. It's crazy, mate. I really don't know what's going on there. Reflections,
I,
I suppose. Go on, mate. Before I
I
go on to
just
the
to
next
say,
one.
I think it was the season before last that I backed Manchester City at 20-1 to get relegated, because that's when I thought the 115 charges would be out and they'd get their sanction, which would be
Yeah. Well, it was
relegation.
September 24, if memory serves me right. My
Yeah,
memory isn't brilliant. I think was
yeah.
the first we heard of it, and I'm sure it was going on before that. Sorry, mate, I can't give you any answers, Geordie up in Edinburgh. It's a terrible. I mean, Kim Cam, he's
Fantastic
saying, look,
recommendation. A fantastic recommendation for Manchester City's lawyers, though. They are
oh,
brilliant
absolutely,
at
they are very good,
kicking the
absolutely.
kicking the can
Uh,
down the road.
Yeah, Kim Cammy saying about Brighton model is terrible. There's no football identity, just buying, farming, and selling players to make money. It doesn't feel like sport, and it's inhumane to treat young players like cattle. Every team in the land utilises academy as a cash cow. There's not a team professional, and that goes through every single league, that will not utilise them as a way to make money, because it's a business. And unfortunately, it's very, this reminds me very much that, especially these days where you've got much bigger teams, much bigger academies. It's like the record industry. You know, if you don't produce what the record industry, whether you're a good singer or not, you're off the label. You've
You're
gone.
That's right. I don't think some of the players, some of those poor young players that Brighton have snapped up, thinking of McAllister going to Liverpool, Caicedo going to Chelsea. Um, I don't think they've suffered too much in it, have they really?
Yeah,
That's why it's a good model, because that's the profits that come in to allow them to keep it going. They've only got a small ground. It's not a massive catchment area in Brighton. They've got to do alternative ways to be able to compete in the
absolutely.
Premier League. And to be
But
honest, Brighton, they're a top 10 team. I mean, they might not be just yet, but they have been consistently top 10 team.
yeah.
Um,
They were close
you
to
know,
Europe, a couple of times, and that's what I said.
they
You've
missed
just
out on the last day at Europe last year.
last year, and that's what I said. You look at these teams that are, as you're quite right, selling clubs. I don't ever want us to be a selling club, but you have to start closing the gap if you can't do it in any other means. And like I said, restrictions are there. You heard the CEO say every club are following the same restrictions. Our problem started with Mike Ashley. That is the problem, because commercially now we are well behind those in front of us. And somebody put in the chat there, in the few years that PIF have been involved, they gave us a lot more money than Mike Ashley ever did. Mike Ashley probably took that amount of money
Yeah.
away from the club rather than gave to the club. So
It's not all roses for them, though, to be honest. I think they've missed
no,
several opportunities commercial wise in bringing cash in and closing that gap.
absolutely,
Um, you know, whether it was a training ground sponsor on our dodgy little training ground, they could have had a 4-year deal in place that would have brought some money in and be renegotiating it now. They've got plans for a new training ground, which is going to come, and it's going to be fantastic. That could be sponsored now. It
Mm,
could be known as the Greg's Newcastle training ground, from now, and they could
yeah,
base sponsorship on it. But
yeah.
I don't
I,
know. I don't know if it's going to be more expensive to sponsor if they can see what it's like. But
yeah, I mean,
I think we've missed a lot of opportunities for income.
well, I mean, Geordie Dan's just saying in there, Silverstone was sacked, and I think I did make a point in saying he did very well on the smaller investments. So if you look at the program, there's a double page within the program that shows all of the minor sponsors, the Fenix and alike. Um, but that's not going to bring in the ching. You've got to start hitting the Adidases and like you said, the big companies to put their name next to, and what really cripples me, and again, the only rationale I have is whether there was a little bit of a handshake when Amanda Staveley went to the Premier League with cap in hand and says, Piff want to buy Newcastle United. What is the ruling? We have to abide by. Apart from the BN Sports that we had to pay back and things like that, was there something written in stone there? Because when you look at all the Saudi companies, the seller that's on our shirts as we speak, why haven't we tapped into some of the Saudi companies? There's plenty out there.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Well, training kit is another one that we've had. We love all of these launches.
Well,
I don't know. Is it all Adidas? But it can all be Adidas and still have a sponsor on it as well, can't it?
Yeah. I mean, like I say, Adidas are selling the shirts. I mean, it doesn't matter who's on the front of the shirt. It's like you look at all the retro shirts; they've still got the Newcastle Brown Ale logo on most of it.
Yeah, that's true.
So
There
it
would
can
be
still be done.
there's opportunities that we've missed out. Hopefully, we won't do it for much
Yeah,
longer.
much longer, exactly.
We'll
Reflections. Yeah, reflections on season and project was the next thing that was really pushed in. And like I say, this isn't verbatim. It literally is just my notes. Acknowledgement. Manager stresses the need to protect player confidence, learn quickly from setbacks, and keep a positive approach amid relentless schedule. Acknowledgement that some key games slipped away due to lapses after gaining the lead. And I mean, we are top of the league when it comes to points lost in winning positions. And again, he alluded to the Brentford game where we took the lead, and unfortunately, Thiago, went on and punished us. And he gave a lot of applause and plaudits towards Thiago coming into the league for the first time and literally hitting the ground running. Discussion of the club's ambition and timeline. And the manager, as you alluded to before, prefers to focus on the daily improvement rather than the long-term promises, like winning the league by 2030. Admits the club is still adjusting to the demands of a heavier fixture calendar and the strain of competing on multiple fronts. And again, it's that one, have we got too many players? Have we not got enough players? And it's all about injuries. And I think what he suggests was, from the outset, we've had an injury of a striker, and that's where everybody and all the pressure was on Voltemorda. Started really well, it tailed off. Then you've got Wissa come back in, and by all accounts, he's still not 100% match fit. He looks nowhere near the player that what we saw at Brentford, the same as Alanga at Nottingham Forest. These were all gambles, lots of money, a lot of cost, lots of pressure come with money spent. So again, there's a lot of question marks over Eddie Head for those Premier proven players that he wanted. That he admits the club is still adjusting to the demands of the heavy fixture. Sorry, I've read that one. He said the recent transfer window discussed. Patience is urged before making judgment on big money signings, citing past examples where players needed time to settle. That's what I was alluding to. Where he was, like I say, there's not enough time. But again, when you've played 30 odd games and you've seen the first example of what Alanga can bring, takes more than patience, mate.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that we were looking for any big money signings in the January window just closed. We weren't thinking we were going to go and compete for Semenyo. What we were looking for was an opportunity to strengthen the depth of the squad again with all of the games that we have coming up. 10 games in January and another 9 in February. It's bonkers. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Averaging just over 3 days a game, week after week after week after week. That's why everyone's creaking.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 extra bodies just to include in the rotation would have helped. And you never know, you might have found one or two of, you might have found a Brian Brobby. came from nowhere for 10 million, and then look at him now. You might have found a Siddiqui out of France. Sunderland did it 3 or 4 times in the summer, spending half of what we got in from Isaac.
Mm.
It's it's. I just think we missed an opportunity, and I think that our remaining assets, who are condemned is the wrong word, but who we're relying on to play the rest of the season for us, are not being helped to be in their maximum condition to get the best results for us. They are being run to the ground. And we had an opportunity to ease that. Didn't take.
We didn't take, yeah, exactly. This was the one, fans and managerial speculation. I've titled this one. The manager addressed social media criticism after recent results, urging fans to trust in the players and staff's effort and resilience. Speculation about potential managerial departure was dismissed. The manager remains focused on the job and doesn't consider his future relevant to current challenges. Is what I've noted there. Like I said, it was a bit uncomfortable, and I think, isn't it funny how time has changed, where all of it, even before the international break, there was nothing discussed, even though the form wasn't good at Newcastle United. There was never really anything. There was any noise about his managerial position, but now all of a sudden, but into February, nothing really has changed. Now all of a sudden, the pressure's on.
Well, the pressure is on. I think the pressure is on. I think he's, as we've observed previously on the channel, a little bit a victim of his own success. He started at a very low level, so progress was very easy to demonstrate. Almost impossible not to progress from where he joined us at. But we finished with a trophy and Champions League qualification last year. It's hard to move on from that and clearly demonstrate that you're progressing. I think some of the progress is more subtle. It's having a sporting director and a CEO that is going to drive us forward. That's a lot of progress. Doesn't show on the pitch. It's having a squad with 3 or 4 more seasoned professionals in it that you can call upon without actually raising the ceiling of it. We've raised the floor a little bit. That's progress. But we need to do that. We needed to do that again in January. It was a missed opportunity, in my view, particularly if PSR meant that they did have some money to spend. So progress is happening, but it's not happening in terms of league positions or trophies being won, and therefore, for a lot of the fans, they just don't think it's stagnating, and obviously it's not.
No, you're right. And just to Tim Clark there is talking about the latest news being scrolled. That isn't ours, mate. That is, like I say, it's the Geordie Boot Boys. I should give them a shout out. That's literally from their webpage. They do a lot of work behind the scenes. So, like I said, we have no control of that scrolling one. That is theirs. So apologies if that's annoying for anybody up there. But apparently it does get updated pretty quick and pretty regular. So let's go with that one. Let's finish off before I get into some of the boys in the chat of what suggested actions to items, if you like, and I suppose what you look at from all this, if you was to literally just put it and focus it on I don't know, a board, and you bullet pointed it. So what they're looking at doing over the upcoming days is monitor fitness of Anthony Gordon, Bruno, Lewis Miley, and a couple of the other injured players that seem closer to returning. Focus on maintaining squad morale and confidence, especially among younger players and newer signings. Continue evaluating squad depth and injury management as the season progresses, and encourage patience regarding recent transfers, allowing players time to adapt and prove themselves worth. Right, let's get into that. Is it? That is virtually all on the presser. I'm just going to do a couple of the starred chats. I have been very busy while I've been looking at you guys. I mean, we did do that one. I think we've done a few. Gaz, NUFC has put in, if the club has learnt anything from the summer, they will go back overseas this summer and find the talent out there like we always did. Well, that's something we've been questioning for a long time, isn't it? Gaz again has already said, PIF have already invested more money than Ashley. I've mentioned that. Well done, mate. Nick Joel, has said, we have to be patient. The academy is the key that unlocks the cartel. Get talent in cheap, develop it into a multi-million-pound player. The problem is when do you start that ball rolling? Because again, I think what we saw from Mitchell, which I loved, was the fact that he tried to build that academy very quick by getting the players that the elite clubs didn't ask for. You know, the Chelseas are very good at doing this. Liverpool's, Manchester United, you know, all of these teams that are probably a lot further down the road than we are regarding the academy, they will already have their fingers and their claws because of their scouting system. It's built, it's ready made. They're feeding all the information back to the coaches at the academies, and they will always have first pick. What Newcastle are going to have is that next tier down. The players that aren't quite good enough for the elite, but maybe come and do a job. Now, I think the problem is getting the progress on the road as being a quick fix. It's not perfect. And I think Mitchell's done a great job in getting numbers into the team, but I still think there's a problem regarding the quality that he's brought in with how quick we turned over these players. I don't think you could have scouted them so good as they do like elsewhere because of the time scale. So maybe this is a work in progress. Again, it's a surmising from myself. I don't know any figures or facts regarding that. It just seems the timescale that Mitchell used to bring these players in, I can't foresee how they could have scouted them and done the due diligence so good as the other clubs could. Do you believe in that, or is that something you don't?
I think you've just got to take a punt to get the thing up and going, haven't you? Alfie Harrison came from Manchester City, and we thought he might develop into something, but City must have let him go for some reason.
Exactly.
Paid $3 million for him.
Yeah, and that's how City do business, isn't it? That's what I said. You know, he's been awful. I mean, I've not seen a player in him.
Harrison Ashby cost us twice that from West Ham, and
Yeah,
where is he at the moment? QPR, is it?
something like that.
He's gone.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you've got to be careful on that. I've got high hopes of, the signs are we can pick up a Park Singh or whatever he's called in Korea, or Cordero from Spain. These are exciting players. Out on bloody loan, of course, so we don't get anybody who's going to try and break through into the team straight away. But yeah, I mean, we just have to put the hard yards in on that.
Yeah,
Take
exactly.
the errors on the chin, clear them out, and keep working.
Yeah,
But
you're right.
I think the
Michael.
fact that our academy side is down near the bottom of Division 2 shows you how much work we've got to do.
Absolutely. Tonali 100% won't down tools, but conversations will have happened to smooth way for departure, in my opinion. Exactly. I mean, like I said, I'm sure this was the same situation that we had. He's given us a bit of a handshake with that year extension because of the ban, and I'm sure that was all it was. It was a talk about we've lost a year because of the ban. Give us a year back, and that's all that's really happened on that. It's great because it still puts that price on his head. He's still got a number of years for us to gain back, and like you said, I think you're right. I don't think, as was suggested in the chat, that performance levels have dropped from him, but I'm sure once if the news that I've read out earlier on is correct, and there has been a suggestion about a move in the summer, I'm sure his performances will heighten again towards that, because you're putting yourself in the shop window, and you're also got to think, as much as I can't believe it, World Cup's coming. You know what I mean? So the other question is, and that was what I was going to say to you, Ian, have performances dropped by some players because of the risk of injury and the World Cup dream?
It's I mean, I know it's coming, but I don't think that's true. I don't think that's
No,
true. Bruno, possibly Joelinton would definitely be at the World Cup, but they're both injured at the minute because they're both crocked. They put it all in. I don't think anyone's easing off to save themselves for the World Cup, unless Anthony
just
Gordon did that against Manchester City.
yeah. You see,
He's
there
thinking if
you
I
go.
keep going and I tear my hamstring, I might not get into Tuchel's March squad and therefore miss out on the World Cup. I don't think so.
No,
It's
not
too far away, isn't it?
too far away. Exactly, but it's something that I read that somebody put in one of the chats, and I'm like, what? Okay, I'll talk about it, but
It's a really fine line if you're a player to think I'm just going to ease off and not be as good as I normally am to avoid injury, but still be good enough to be picked for my national side. Because if you ease off too much, you aren't going to get picked for the World Cup.
no, but when you're being picked game after game after game, and now all of a sudden, I'm not saying the Anthony Gordon injury is a fake, but how many players have we seen go down with hamstring issues? Your Tinos, things like that. These
Yeah,
muscular events happen, and if it's a serious tear, you might as well count World Cup your ambitions goodbye. Um, and for those, like I said, that haven't got that mental approach, some players won't even think about it because I always say I've seen so many players get injured by not going in 100% into the tackle and shirking it than you ever will in the thing. So go on, mate.
it's all right. I've got a customer coming in. That was all.
Oh,
Try to mute
fabulous!
myself, but I can't see where that is.
I can do it for you if you
Um,
need to.
Mute me for 2 ticks.
Will do.
Thanks.
Um, so you've got this. Somebody had put in. I think it was Adams. There you go. In my eyes, Bruno is our 6, and you can see the team change when he moves there, and Tonali is off the pitch. You certainly get a little bit of a different bounce from Bruno, who seems to be not frightened from travelling further forward. Um, I just don't. I just think they're both really good centre midfielders. And somebody had put it in again. I don't know whether I've actually earmarked it, but I put it back into the chat earlier where he says our team just doesn't move the likes of other teams do, and you saw that with Manchester City. Everybody was constantly on the move around and available for that ball through the middle, out wide, everywhere on the park. There seemed to be players just freely moving, and sometimes we do look very static, and maybe that does affect when you've got the ability, the same as Tonali does, to actually play the simple game. If you haven't got players around you that are willing to use that 5 yards of space and continue moving, sometimes we've seen it so often, especially English players, because we have that lazy mentality. I'll pass the ball and stop. It's not as fluid as you often see. So maybe we have got to change for not just the like of Voltamada situation. Surely we have to change to suit everybody's game. And like I say, when we are on fire and it's everybody's up for the game, the fluidity of the game, the press, the progression of the ball is there for all to see. I just can't understand why you can go into one game one way and then come into another game. And to be fair, you look from being a promotion pushing team to a relegation looking team in the matter of games. It just doesn't make it doesn't make sense to me.
Confidence, isn't it? Really, confidence. And I mean, I think they can do that. I've loved watching Hall and Byrne and Botman play the little intricate bits through round in the bottom left-hand corner when they're walking the ball away from being under pressure. And they can do it. They might bring Ramsdale into it to get it across to Chow and bring it up the right in the end, but they can
Mm,
do it.
mm,
But then you see a different game and they can't, and it's hoofed up the line and straight out of play, and we've given the
mm,
ball back again. It's all down to
mm.
confidence. Maybe it's down to who you're playing against. No.
Geordie up in the north of Edinburgh, he's saying Sandro has not been playing for the Toon badge for months. I now question his morals and ethics after Newcastle took him in. Disgrace. I mean, like I said, you can. Everybody will see it differently. Say to Tonali, if he wants to leave, he must get back to his best so he can get to his true worth. So if he wants to cruise the season, He aren't going anywhere. He wanted a long contract. We need to not be soft, says Gavin. Yeah, I'm going to
Yeah,
say,
but we need not to argue over the last £5 million and then sell him in September or at
yeah,
the end of
exactly.
August
Like we did with
when we haven't had
Isaac
the
when it
cash
was
to
too
spend.
late. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think
Just
we
too
lean
late to
into it.
move. Yeah, absolutely.
We might have a 90 million value on him, and somebody's happy to pay us 82 and a half straight away. Take it, I would say.
Yeah,
Still a
with a clause of
good
some
profit on him.
description. Yeah, 5% sell on clause if that's the case, or something silly like that.
Yeah.
Gaz again saying, Tonali, I've always said he's used in the wrong position, how he's used him as a workhorse. The legs in midfield basically to clear up. That's not his strength. He's a number 8 all day, not a 6, says Gaz. Nick Giles is talking about, depends on the game. I've seen us have a hell of a lot of possession, and you're right, we struggle. Sorry, I'm trying to look at the bottom of that. Struggle to pass and move when those type games. So easy for other managers to plant against us. Says Nick Giles, and I think we've said the problem with Eddie Howe is there is no, even though he says there's small adjustments to the opponents, there never seems to be a lot of adjustments. Sometimes we'll go into the deeper motion, sometimes we'll go on the press. It just seems very much. I can't see much of a difference. Can you?
Well, I mean, I can't. I don't notice the subtleties really. I was amazed that I forget who it was who was interviewed after the game, but Arnie Slot just made one or two small adjustments to their tactics, which is what turned the first 35 minutes into the last hour of that game. And whatever he changed was phenomenal because it was just like we got turned off, our batteries ran out, and they dominated the ball. I didn't spot what the differences were. I didn't see
No.
them happening. I just noticed that we suddenly couldn't keep a hold of the ball, couldn't pass the ball. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'm sure there is a lot of little in-game tweaking going on, probably based on how the opposition players are actually playing as well. I mean, whether they're in form or not. Who's just been booked, who's just been kicked, will all have an effect. They'll be tweaking what they're doing all of the time to that.
Mm.
But I can just give an eye test as to how we're performing overall.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
Gaz thinks we're going to have a bit of a hit this season, unfortunately. The club would have learned so much from the summer. I think next season will be put right and some big money will be spent. And I think that's virtually what they were alluding to, wasn't it? The money will be saved and spent in the summer. And now, will we see Ross Wilson in action? Because that's another criticism that was, thrown towards the backroom staff, if you like, is what has Ross Wilson been doing all this time if there isn't players to come in on loan? And I suppose the other thing I was going to ask you, Ian, if I might, is the fact that when you look at Eddie Howe's philosophy regarding the transfer windows, he gives himself such a small pool to pick from, right? It's got to be a buy. Sometimes we talk about Premier League proven. Sometimes he never thinks about looking at a loan to buy. He doesn't look at free agents. He doesn't look at anything else apart from that small pot. So surely, as a director of football, even if you have got a really good player out there that potentially could come out on loan, and I mentioned one lad that seemed to be very closely marked regarding identity to Ekatike, that was part of our group from PIF. If he's not interested in the options to loan to buy, as he did with Louis Saul, where do you go?
hmm, it can't be left entirely up to Eddie then, can it? And I don't think it is. I think the director of football, there must be a huge scouting network which they're developing all of the time, constantly filtering information through and then being monitored. You'd think that I like to think that there's a great long list of players in all sorts of different positions at different ages that we're watching, and when the opportunity arises, we can move for them if they're who we want.
Hmm.
And I'm sure Howe's involved on that. I don't think we'll get many players on that list that he's not interested in. Um, but I think last year it was down to who Howe could think of, wasn't it? and that's why it was Premier League proven. And we picked Wissa in the first couple of weeks of the window, and we stuck with Wissa right the way through to the end, even though he came so late he couldn't have any pre-season, etc., etc.
Yeah. I mean,
It
he does
needs to
look
be
like
a
a team.
it needs to be a process, not just the manager's win.
Yeah,
I'm sure they've
exactly.
got a process in place now.
Yeah. You guys, you're saying Poole, United, Chelsea, Arsenal all utilise their academy for more than just sales. They actually believe in following through with graduation to the first team. But you've named every single elite team that have been doing this since time began, unfortunately. And like I say, we are so far behind the European talent, coach-wise, when it comes to just English players. So, when you look at the PPPs, I started to get involved, and like I say, I spent a few months over in Holland, Feyenoord, Ajax, just having a look at the way they train the kids, the youth, with tennis balls and the like. And I try to bring that methodology back home. I'll put your teeth in a minute, mate. And I turned around and I realised kids aren't interested because it's not natural to them. They want to kick a ball, they want to go and play, blah, blah, blah. And that is where we felt, I think, many moons ago, we fell short on the European tactical. And we're moving into it now because of the amount of European people and coaches coming this way. It's certainly flooding our kids with information and skill sets and everything else. And we are now starting to see the fruits of the trees, because if you look at the England squad, there is a lot of good talent there. Whether that can be utilised fully to go, and win something, then only time will tell. And to me, that you talk about the cream on the crop. When you've got teams like you've just mentioned, that have been doing this for years and years and years, those players that can come through the grades and make it into the first team are a small number from those that get sold. Now, Man City, I'll give you an instance. They got and created £90 million profit just from the sales from academy. Right? That is an incredible sum when you think of the players that they get coming through the academy. It's you just can't get anywhere near that. So for me, it's going to take 10 years, probably even longer, for Newcastle to be in that mould. You'll get the odd one, like you've got your Moleys, you had your Longstaffs and, Andersons that have moved on now, but you will get the odd one that come through, and it looks like there the other younger Moley seems to be hitting that mould. So only time will tell on that one. But I do think, unfortunately, Newcastle are well away from being the likes of the Manchester United, Cities, Arsenals, Chelseas, by just bringing them through. Even Liverpool, the lads that they bring through, I mean, Arsenal have got that young kid, the 15-year-old, that looks an absolutely breath of fresh air in the midfield. He's played in the Premier League already, and he looks like he's never been away from the place. So, like I said, I think it's there, but only time will tell before we can get there.
I agree. I'm just thinking of the 90 million Man City made selling their kids from the academy. They're worth a lot more than that now, because that will include Delap and Palmer, won't it?
It will, but have you seen the sell-on clause that they've got with them?
Oh, well, it's
business,
an investment,
mate.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all business.
Yeah.
They get their money.
This is what I said. I mean, one thing that Newcastle have done, if you look at Anderson, right? They had to get rid of Anderson on the 11th hour because of the PSR situation that we were in because of overspending, right? So Minte goes, Wynne has said Anderson went for somewhere around about 18 million when you take off the debacle with Flado, who again, God only knows what's happening with him now. Looks like Seville want only £5 million to spend on him. So that's going to be another loss in Newcastle. And I think that is our biggest gripe at the moment. We are forced with our hand up our back to a degree to sell players on that aren't going to hit the fold, and we always make a loss on certain individuals. We're never going to be able to make a massive gain. And to Newcastle, that stings because we aren't in that financial credibility the same as the other clubs are. So they can make a loss on. I mean, look at Manchester United, how much money they have lost buying their players because of the amount of managers that wanted a select player in that's never really hit the ground running. It is incredible. And like I said, like it or lump it, it is a tough industry, football, and it's not like an everyday job. You've got to hit the high notes. There's got to be something that you see on an everyday basis. There's still the education side of things that some kids, have to do in their own time these days. That away from home, these young'uns, there's a lot of pressure on them. It's not as easy as people think playing Premier League football. And like I say, the lads that come from overseas, like I said, it's an even bigger pressure. So, Ian, is there anything that you want to add when it comes to the presser this morning? Like I say, I've seen we've been on nearly 2 hours. Thank you very much. It's gone really quickly. I'm glad you could stay with us during your work day today, mate.
Started early so I could watch the presser. I thought I'd closed the door, but I was waiting for that delivery. Invaded by 2 customers is a bit much, but let's just say I'm shut. I don't know. I just saw this. It's got nothing to do with anything, and I thought it was quite funny. My key ring, which I don't know where it's come from, says your shirt says cocaine and caviar, but your face says fish sticks and fentanyl. Honestly,
love
I'm being
that.
insulted. I'm being insulted by I don't know who's gone on
Yeah,
my key ring.
that's lovely.
Anyway.
I love that. Well, I mean, Gavin Fuller here. Look, Gary, they must have knew they were in trouble at the start of the window rather than wait till the last minute and get 17 million for Anderson. Well, that's what I'm saying.
They had to do it by the end of June, didn't they?
June, yeah,
That
exactly.
was the pressure. It was because of purchases earlier in the year that had tipped us over. And they probably thought they could offload a Miggy or something, but unfortunately nobody wanted anybody else that we had. That was the only deal we could do. And we had to do it by fixing Forest's PSR problems and paying them 20 million for Vlachodimos.
Vlachodimos, yeah. Golden handshakes. Yeah, it's crazy, mate. Absolutely bonkers. Right then, guys, thank you ever so much. I'll finish with this one from Benny Boy as it's just come in. Huge pressure for youngsters in the Premier League. That's why I cannot stand when pundits label kids a generational talent. That harms them more than anything, puts far too much pressure on them. I'll be honest with you, I think what puts a lot more pressure on kids these days, unfortunately, is the belief that they get from parents. I think there's sometimes parents can be the worst critic and the highest motivator, but also can tell them they're something that they're not. And on that note, I'm going to bid you a very good day on this Friday. We're the lads, lasses. Thank you, Ian, Super Mac Mackay, for being with me, even though you're at work. It's been lovely to have you. Thanks to everybody that's been involved in the chat. As always, it's been great to have you. And hopefully we've covered a lot of the presser today. Like I said, it's very difficult to make notes as we go along. But we've discussed the main points, and that's what matters. Like I said, it wasn't nice for Eddie today, talking about his career. Like I said, sometimes those words will come back one day, and we'll all say, it's turning nasty. I'm sure it will be sooner rather than later if form continues. Yeah, if form continues. But up until then, it's still the gaffer, and away the lads. Good luck for the weekend. I'll see you Saturday for the watch along. Come and join me then. Have a lovely rest of the weekend. Take care.
Do the pip.